Hello everyone. Welcome in. Hope you've been having a fantastic time at CozyCon. I know I have. I also appreciate CozyCon for letting me host this panel. Today I'm going to be doing a sense of scale. We're going to be talking about gamification, game design, and how to use them, and all of your things. Fair warning, uh, there is a lot of words in this. I was having a lot of trouble setting it up, but that's okay. We're gonna get through it. It's gonna be great. So, let's get started with the introduction. Balance. Already messed up. Fantastic. Balance is a term often used to describe the concept of equality between multiple powers even, the players, characters, weapons, environments, factions, or even magic systems. How do we strike this mythical balance? What is its purpose? Why does everyone talk about balance, but seemingly no one agrees on how to actually achieve it? This is a massive topic, and truthfully, vastly more complex than I initially realized, which has gargantuan branches of study that encompass many fields. Rather than attempting to fit a tsunami in a solo cup, let's restrict our talk to a few key pieces. I'm going to have a little bit of a break between each session. I do have about, if I speed run it, I can get it done in about 35 minutes, so that gives us plenty of time to answer any questions that we have between the bits. Would it be interesting to talk about that subject? Fantastic! I am more than happy to give you the surface level of it, because, man, there are a lot of things. I started reading, and I didn't stop for a while, because, whoa, there's a lot. There is so much. It is a huge, huge topic, but hopefully I can cover it super quick. Or at the very least, in a way that people can understand, because I know it was a bit confusing for myself. Let's get started with the next one, and I hope you enjoy my wonderful graphic that I made. Definitely not this morning. The purpose of balance is ultimately to maintain the desired and often positive user experience. Thus, it is also the framework in which your mechanics interact with that experience. Given this, it is important to first have a strong handle on the focus of your project, its application, and your audience. Military games are not always simulations, military books are not always realistic to a T, and military stories seldom contain every round fired. Is your aim to achieve a sense of struggle, realism, or fun? What defines your project, and who do you want to reach? Before we continue, ask yourself not only what you want to achieve, but what feelings you wish to impart through your achievements. Often, when the user experience is left undefined, the result can feel confused or lifeless. To use a game as an example, the gang battles in Grand Theft Auto 5 are often described as just there. Aside from the first introduction to the player, they don't inspire much even, more than a feeling of idle time. The body is there, but the soul is missing. Even though they do have gang battles in the game, it feels kind of just placed there. Kind of like they had a bullet point on their game design document, which I do maintain. A game design document or a design document in general is a great thing to have, but it feels like it was just a bullet point. It doesn't feel like it was planned as part of the whole. It feels like it was just planned as the thing. And that's why it's really important to define your user experience before if you want this type of thing. We'll get more into that later, but basically if you want to take this method, it's really important to get your user experience down pat. Because that lets you hone things in such a way where it's not just a bullet point, it's an actual tangible thing that the player is going to go through, or that the reader is going to go through. And it helps really flesh out the ideas that you want to add to your project without just having them be just there. A great example with the gang battles is when you first play them, it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. It's so cool that I get to go into these locations and have these extra interactions. And oh, I have to use different weapons, I have to take cover. It's, there's a bunch of variety in how they're acting. Uh, but the problem with it is that every interaction like that is exactly the same. It has the fundamentals, but it was never designed to hold anyone's attention for longer than a few moments. It's meant to be, oh, it's there and then kind of gone. It's something you do when you wait for your friend to arrive, not something you do for fun. Also, I do apologize. Gonna be a little bit wonky in OBS. About halfway through, I'm gonna start messing around with stuff, but that's okay. We're gonna get through it. As you can see, and you might have heard me mention this thing earlier, gamification is one of our lovely topics. Which, by the way, if anyone has any questions, do please ask. I can always stop at any time. I have breaks scheduled in between each one of these. And you can see that, wow, the words got a lot denser. I actually started having problems fitting it on the screen because I didn't realize how much I had to write on the subject until I started writing. And then, oh man, I don't want to cut any out because it seems like important information. So I'm like, man, that's a lot more than I thought there was gonna be. I came in prepared for like 2 sentences and got paragraphs. But anyway, speaking of games, what the heck is gamification, and how can we use it to assist in the creative process and to maintain the interest of the audience? Gamification is simply the introduction of game design philosophies to any given medium. Think of throwing away paper and how uninteresting such a task can be. However, if we choose to perceive the trash can as a hoop and include points or penalties for the respective success or failure to complete the task becomes not only more interesting, but even fun. The introduction of even basic game mechanics has transformed this otherwise uninspired task to something that even your friends may wish to participate in, no matter how boring the underlying task may be. After all, it's still just paper, and you're still just throwing it away. That's gamification. We give something without a game. That's great, I hear you say. But how does it help me write? Well, instead of viewing your book as a set list of events as a means to an end, assuming such is your perspective, you could view your book through the lens of game design. Your story becomes a game being played in the third person by the writer, yourself, and as such, the reader. Will the protagonist be able to achieve the points necessary to acquire a good ending? Or will they struggle by having to start again from the beginning? How do they progress? What's the next level? What new mechanics are added to the hypothetical paper disposal? And how does the protagonist learn to navigate these new mechanics? Something that's oftentimes overlooked in my own projects is that I constantly ignore the mechanics of my story, and that leads me being like, wait a minute, wait, hold on, how did that work again? Like, I'll be like, oh man, we're gonna go into this building where these guys are at, and we're gonna be, over here where this massive castle is. Oh no, I don't remember what the castle does. Oh no, I don't remember what the people are. Oh no, I don't remember what they do. Oh no, I don't remember the significance. Oh no. And then all of a sudden, what started as very simple, we go to a place, has become an absolute, cluster of ideas. And if I would have taken the time to do the planning beforehand, and be like, oh, well, this is the next level. The next level contains this as a map. The map is going to be the castle. And the enemies are going to be these people. And these people do this. And they have this. And it's, they have these type of patterns and things that they'll do. It would have been easier. And that is why I choose to use game design specifically and gamification to write. Because it helps me with my ADHD squirrel brain to add organization to something that doesn't really have much rules to it. And I'm not saying that you objectively have to add rules to your writing. It's just that if that helps you and if that organization is beneficial, it's a fantastic way to do it through using game design. Because, you're trying to design something that's a pleasant user experience and an engaging user experience, and I can't think of anything better to have for a book. You want your reader to stay engaged. You want them to find it entertaining, whether that be struggle and pain, or that be happiness and joy. Yay, everything's great. I'm sure everyone's played their fair share of Dark Souls or something similar, and probably read something just as harrowing. So balance. Let's get on to actual balance, shall we? See, I did warn you that it gets a bit dense, but that's okay. We'll work through it. It's fine. I did try to make it as easily readable as possible. Uh, but if it's a lot, don't worry. This should be recorded. You should be good to come back and read it later. And if you can't read through the things because your eyes start glossing over, totally fair. You can just listen to the dulcet tones of my voice explaining the topic. So often when people do want to, yeah, it's fine, Tim. So often this leads to the discussion of mathematical balance. Yes, unfortunately, this is where math begins to get involved, but mathematical balance is using math to achieve a quote-unquote perfect, logistically even field. Player 1 does 1 damage, player 2 also does 1 damage. This is an example of perfect mathematical balance. No matter which player you choose, you will always be at the exact same advantage as your opponent. Why then is it so hard to achieve, and how can it even be a detriment in some cases? To begin with the latter, remember when I said the purpose of balance is ultimately to maintain the user experience? Well, here's where that comes in. See, sorry. See, it's okay to have perfect equilibrium between protagonist and antagonist for some stories, such as peer versus peer, but could you imagine if your villain CEO had the same power as your spiky-haired anime protagonist? If the purpose of your project is to make it feel like your player or reader is at a disadvantage, it may be wise to place them at such disadvantage. Imagine the difference between two equally powered, blue-haired, glowy characters sparring in the mood that gives off. Now, imagine someone who isn't blue and isn't glowing sparring such a partner. How does this hypothetical peasant, by comparison, get an edge or even stand their ground against a glowing powerhouse? There's your struggle and your hook. Now, let's say you actually do want perfect mathematical balance between both sides. How the heck is that so hard? Well, let's look at checkers. Checkers is a simple and most would agree fair game. After all, it is symmetrically balanced. It is a symmetrically balanced game, even. You have as much power as your opponent does. You both abide by the same rule set, move set, and action set. Even if you get to move first, that comes at the cost of revealing part of your strategy and making yourself vulnerable to a potential attack. Wait, that works. How then do you achieve a checkers-like symmetry between a wizard and a soldier? Assuming you would like to, how do you tackle the difference in skill between two players? Take a look at your favorite competitive game, that Overwatch, Call of Duty, what have you, and how often they need to push a balance patch to gain an idea of just how complex this becomes. Balancing two discs that only move in 2 to 4 directions is easy, but balancing a pistol and a sniper rifle has always been the topic of much debate. It's really easy to think that you know what to do when it comes to balance, and it's really hard to actually do it. It's really hard. Because you could say like, oh well, if the wizard has medium range and has a staff, then we'll just make it so like, yeah, the wizard has infinite, shots, but they have to wait before it goes sort of like a reload, but not quite. And the soldier has a medium range thing, and we'll just have it have the same damage. But is the soldier's finite ammo going to create an imbalance for the wizard? Is it going to make them overpowered? Is it going to make it so people start favoring the wizard because it's easier to maneuver, it's easier to fire? Maybe it just has better usability for the majority of players. Maybe that's just a play style that the people that you're appealing to have chosen. And we'll get to that. It's great because, oh god, I hear you say, this sounds complex. And you're correct, it is. Let's make it worse. Let's include progression, the overarching advantages or disadvantages a player or your protagonist gains as they continue through your experience. Maybe the protagonist gains an amulet that lets them read thoughts. Maybe the player gains the ability to dodge. Maybe both gain the ability to revive, albeit just once. How then do you alter your expertly crafted mathematical balance to keep these new variables? Some games, shows, and books have chosen to abandon progression altogether in favor of vanity. After all, the players never had a mechanical advantage for having a blue skin instead of a red one, right? Let's just assume white skins and snow maps don't exist for this example. A memory I'm sure is going to bring back very fond memories to Halo players. While cosmetic progression is certainly an approach, it's not a universal approach, as not every protagonist will do what they do for vanity alone, nor will what they do always come freely. Similarly, not every player cares about getting a new cape, a better gun, or a different way to approach situations, and may lose interest altogether without their preferred progression. So balance, progression, how do these interact in a way which doesn't make us rip our hair out? Is there anything we can do? Actually, yeah. It's time to take a look at our respective cameras and say, it's scaling time. Because that's right, it's time to get a sense of scale. That's right, they said the name. To start with, the Nexus scale anyway. In this context specifically, it's going to be the way things change over time. Do things get more powerful as we go along? Or is it nothing better, just different? It can also refer to the way counterbalance is applied to scale, quote unquote, things to a certain strength. So that's important to touch on actually, because scale typically can refer to a bunch of different things. So you probably hear, oh well, this is out of scale. Oh well, it's not just scale. Oh well, blah, blah, blah. Whatever flavor of scale you hear, it could be vastly different from person to person, vastly different from topic to topic, vastly different from even field to field, and it just gets huge, all over complicated, and it's great. Everything's awesome. We love it here. Uh, but specifically, when I'm saying scale, I just mean how things progress over time. It may include some nuance of the other definitions, but for the most part, it's just how do we get from point A to point B, as you can see on the left. And as you can see, I chose 3 specific scales to talk about today: linear, horizontal, and hybrid scaling. And I am so excited to get into these because, oh my god, it's incredible. Yeah, that's right. Look at all that text. It's amazing. I'm not losing my mind. It's great. So, linear scaling is one of the many ways to handle scaling, and as well, linear. Linear scaling is like a straight line from point to point, and all upgrades typically follow that line. I know, right? Think of your box standard classic RPG. A level 1 player can easily kill a level 1 goblin. A level 2 player can kill a level 3 goblin with difficulty, and etc. Now, this isn't to say that all linear scales work exactly like this, and the idea is more just that linear scales choose a direction and move that way. Maybe for twists, you have a linear scale that goes down. Maybe your hero is dying and they're constantly losing their power. The most obvious pro to this system is that, well, it's typically easier to implement and understand. Sword plus 1 becomes sword plus 2, becomes sword plus 3. Everyone knows the drill. Everyone's likely experienced linear scaling. Everyone has likely experienced linear scaling at some point in their lives. Another pro is that you feel your progress substantially. At level 2, level 1 goblins are easy baby mode, and typically that feels great because you earn that progress. Seeing a higher level player gives you something to aspire to be, and reaching their level feels impactful. Yet another pro is that not only are linear scales easily applied, but other systems are easily applied to linear scales. You don't want your player going in the meadows? Put some high level gobos there, and success! Your player got lost. Your player now has 2 choices: get their butt kicked or come back later. Now, are the main problems of linear scaling? since we did talk about all their goodness. Firstly, it typically encourages forgettable content as it's very easy to ignore your previous achievements. After all, will your protagonists care about their wooden sword in battle when they have their iron sword? Maybe they forget about their previous equipment entirely. Another con is that linear scaling typically leads to significant imbalances in multiplayer. Imagine trying to be a level 1 in an area where the combatants are level 100. Not only is this discouraging, it's a difficult problem to solve. Maybe you want everyone in the same world, and maybe you want your players to unlock new areas as they progress, and maybe you don't want to bar off beginner content to old players. Finally, the last con I'll give in this panel specifically is power creep, which we will approach later in more detail. I mean, its own section. It's great. I see everyone's reaction to the wall of text. It's amazing, right? I love it. Yeah, I try to make it as easily readable as possible, and oh man, it is hard to do. I almost debated just completely walling off everything and just having massive text in the front just so that everyone could read it. Because, oh man, that is a lot. And if you think we're done, it's almost time to move into horizontal scaling. But I'm going to take a city, give you guys a chance to ask any questions you may have, and pretend that I'm not taking a second to breathe. Zane, welcome in. Howdy, howdy. Welcome to CozyCon. I probably will be going back over this panel after a few revisions and etc. And I probably will be working harder to make it even thicker because oh my god, there are so many things I could go over and so many things that I asked from what I initially planned. Howdy, howdy, Zay. Welcome in. Super awesome to see you here. I was enjoying your art earlier. Yes, massive wall. It's great. Family's going great. We're making great time. Actually, planned on us to be about halfway through our time, and it seems we're blazing past already. It's fantastic. Now, you remember I said it's gonna be a little bit wonky after a second? Well, here's where that comes in because man, OBS was not designed to do this, and man, Lumia helps out, but it was not designed to do this. So I ask for your patience as some of the changes might look a little bit strange. There we go. That looks fine. It's great. Another wall of text. It's fantastic. I am so freaking happy that I was able to get this to actually fit because man, it was a challenge. Yes, wall number 2. We're getting through them. It's great. Horizontal scaling, as opposed to linear scaling, on the other hand, is much like an apartment building with many rooms on the same floor. None of them are particularly better per se, but some are better for you personally. Maybe you don't mind being far from the entrance and prefer the quiet being far back. Maybe you have absolutely, or sorry, maybe you absolutely have to be near an exit due to a medical problem, which requires easy paramedic access. Again, the philosophy here is not better, just different. Imagine your sword doesn't get better, it still does the same damage it always has, but you find a hammer with a moveset you just click with. The hammer isn't objectively better, it's just subjectively better for you. A pro then of horizontal scaling is that you never feel behind. You can keep the same sword forever and have no problems. Or keep the same hammer forever and be totally fine. Let's say the protagonist just likes iron swords and doesn't want anything else. Fair game here? Had to take a second to breathe. And also catch where I was. Another pro is that horizontal scaling focuses more on the who than the what. It's less about what weapon or item the person has, or is, rather, and more about who the person is interacting with them. Yet another pro is that because of the who rather than what attitude, horizontal scaling incentivizes skill or strategy based encounters. It's less about trying to outgear your opponent and more about learning to use what you have more effectively. Alongside these 2 points, enemies in horizontal scales typically have near identical threat levels. Maybe you have different approaches best for each, but the importance is the nuance outside of statistics. A con, then, of horizontal scaling is that it may be boring for the reader or player. Instead of coming off as interesting to use what you have, it may come off as dry or simply lacking progression at all. Another con here is that it's just difficult to implement. It's hard to equate a sword to a hammer, and it's hard to get your audience to care when nothing is really better and no enemy is really stronger. A final con to end us off here is that it's hard to implement other systems that work well with horizontal scales. How would you limit a player from going to the next area outside of an actual wall? I'm sure there are creative solutions out there, but the point is that they're more difficult to achieve than linear scales. If every enemy is relatively the same, it's going to be really difficult to just shove some more difficult enemies, quote unquote, into the next area and say, hey, you can't go here yet, like MMOs do, like classic RPGs do. You can't really come across in an ideal horizontal scale. Like just the pure horizontal scaling system as it is, no edits. It's quite hard, right, to have like, oh well, you've got the sword, which is arguably like just as good as any other weapon that you're ever gonna get in the game, and you've been fighting enemies that are just as strong as every other enemy has been and ever will be. So it's kind of hard to have the same like walls that a linear scaled system has. It's not to say that they're impossible. I've definitely seen ways to do it, such as like uh, you can have a hammer, right, that can only access certain blocks or something. Maybe it's only able to break certain boulders or something, but that's still just a wall. It's just a really cleverly hidden wall, and it's also a wall that doesn't feel like a wall, but it's still a wall. So that is one problem with horizontal scaling, is that it can end up feeling just like, ah, great. I've reached as far as the writer will let me go right now. Cool. I guess let's backtrack. It's it can not feel as inspired as some of the things that we're kind of used to with linear scales. But we're gonna get to that in a moment. So linear scales are easy, but give it this mythical power creep you won't talk about, and horizontal scales assumedly don't fall into power creep, but it's near impossible to achieve. Are we just out of luck? No, of course not. Not only are both systems usable in their own right and should be thrown to the wayside because of their flaws, there's a third option that we haven't even covered yet. What if we had the best of both worlds? Ease of use, flexibility, reliability, the works. Hybrid scaling. I love talking about hybrid scaling. If both alone have problems, just stick them in a blender. Much like light roast and dark roast, they balance each other quite well. Take Guild Wars 2 for instance. They use linear scaling for player progression, but use horizontal scaling when the player moves to a previous zone. A level 3 acts and feels like a level 1 in a level 1 zone, but a level 3 feels like a level 3 in a level 3 zone. When you hit max level 80, the system doesn't need to scale you any higher and again, just start scaling horizontally. Your new equipment acts differently, but might not be especially better. Hammers, swords, guns all act differently and are better for different people. You get your classic RPG up to level 80, and you get to explore the intricate differences between skills and weapons when you reach the level you've been aspiring towards the entire game. You've earned getting here, and now it's time to enjoy it. Oh my god, yes, will it blend indeed? I love hybrid scaling especially because, sorry if you can hear like the creaking of my chair in the background, by the way. I love hybrid scaling because it's so fun to talk about. There are so many ways you can approach hybrid scaling. Dark Souls has hybrid scaling. Uh, like I said, Guild Wars 2 has hybrid scaling. I think even Guild Wars 1 has some basic hybrid scaling to it. Granted, it is more linear than hybrid. It's fantastic. If you like anything from linear scaling of classic RPGs, and you just want to add, like, oh, maybe you want level 100 to be able to hang out with their friend who just started playing, you can do that. If you want to have it so, oh, like player ones coming into PvP against level 50s have level 50 powers, you can do that too. That's what Final Fantasy 14 does. Glorious, critically acclaimed. It scales down and up. It's fantastic. You can have everyone have a usable experience no matter where they go, no matter what they do, no matter who they fight, no matter who they face. You can still have the it's not a wall technically. You can still have very easily accessible, understandable skill trees, level trees, statistics, whatever you want to have, and you can have it all scale fine, just like you're used to. And then just let it be that other people have better scaled, interactions with people below them or above them. Everything just kind of works. It's fantastic. I have to kind of like cut myself off here actually, because hybrid scaling has literally had me on like a rant for 3 hours. I'm not even joking. I have had a conversation with a friend of mine about hybrid scaling for hours on end, and I love the concept so much. I love the intricacies that you can reach with it so much, because it's just such a chonky, very, very, very chonky, um, just system. It's huge. You can get as in depth with it as you want, and you can stay as simple as you want. Okay, let's get on to the next one. I'm actually quite surprised as well to see that there aren't many questions. I'm going to take that as that I'm explaining things well. That's fantastic. I actually am really happy that that I seem to be doing that correctly. So, power creep. Oh, power creep. Oh, power creep. I hear you say, what even is power creep if it's so bad? Power creep is the gradual creep of exponential power gain through typically linearly scaled systems. In that, if being able to punch a twig through is boring, just let them punch through a tree. Well, they've been able to take down one bad guy, maybe now two, three, four, five, etc. It's fine. This is why gamification can help and why it's so important to me to introduce. Gamification makes you more aware of the numbers you're playing with, the scale you're working with, and helps you set the stage or limits before things get out of hand. If getting out of hand is fine to you or your objective, that's okay. I've watched Fairy Tail and am an avid Dragon Ball fan. I can't judge. Seeing someone throw blitzy blasty glowy balls of nuclear force is fun sometimes. It just doesn't need to be everywhere, and there's nothing wrong with an easy game because the protagonist is too powerful. I don't want that for every game. Casual games are fine. Oh my god. Casual games are fine. They have their place. I'm not going to be an elitist here, be like, oh, now casual games are stupid and they're bad. Every game needs to be pro gamer mode. It doesn't. There's no need for that. Every game is different. Every game's audience is different. And I'm not trying to say that my scaling system or that the systems that you see here are objectively better than just not having one. It's just all about how you want to achieve what you're going for and what you do want to go for. If you want a painstakingly balanced thing where you go into every little intricate detail and you make sure that every last little piece is in place, you can do that. And if you don't care and you just want to have a dude punch somebody through 3 mountains straight, it's been done. And it was awesome. I love that episode of Dragon Ball Z. And you might be asking, which one? And exactly my point. All of them were awesome. And all of them are memorable if you can ask which one. It's incredible. You don't need Krillin and Goku to be specifically balanced. It doesn't matter for the case of the story. The point of having Krillin there is to show how good Goku is at that time. This is specifically talking about in reference to the later of Dragon Ball Z. He is there as a character, but his purpose is kind of just to show how powerful Goku is. In Dragon Ball Super, spoilers for that. Someone's like, "Hey, punch me," and he does. He punches him through several mountains, and he wrecks his face. And like, that's definitely not balanced. There's no way that's balanced. But it's incredible. The rule of cool wins. It doesn't need to be. It's fine if it's not balanced because it's awesome, and that's the purpose of the show. It's not to make you be like, "Oh, I see. His plan was perfect all along. By punching Krillin at an exactly 45-degree angle on the nose, he maximized his force, allowing Krillin to reach an aerodynamic efficiency unheard of before, allowing him to fly with 100% energy going through his body." It's not really about that. It's just, oh my god, he punched him so hard. That was really cool. Like, you can't help but get happy when the Saiyan in this show starts glowing yellow and you're like, oh yeah, things are getting serious. And if that's your thing, awesome. I am 100% here for you. So, I am going to go ahead and go to the ending question, and then we can have a little Q&A if anyone has any like leftover questions or questions that I might have not even covered or anything. And maybe we can have a little talk about that. I actually didn't expect to finish this quickly. So, hey, that's actually fantastic because I wanted to have a Q&A and I didn't think I'd have the time. This is dope. Whoops. Aha, that's the one. Also, hope you enjoy this graphic that I definitely didn't make this morning. That's the mimic the person I'm about to talk about. So, after all this, I have an example and a question. And by the way, spoiler warning, I will be talking about Adventure Time, and I will be spoiling a character, and major plot points revolving around them. They are an integral character. If this troubles you, I deeply appreciate you listening, and hope to see you around. Alright, gotta give you a hot second. If you don't want spoilers for Adventure Time, please save yourself. This is a really, really cool character. But yeah. Alright. Now, they're muted or temporarily left. The Lich. Love the Lich. The Lich in Adventure Time is a being of autonomy. They move only and act only when it is to achieve their one goal. The end. The end of everything. They are, after all, the end. Confusing, right? It's great. They have lost every battle and will win the eventual war. There we go. Yes. He has been bested time and time and time again, yet he will always win in the end. He can hypnotize his victims, possess others, and regenerate. He never fully dies, but he can break, and it takes time for him to get back where he was. He can be restrained or hindered. Now, when he wins the world, the universe, it ends. He is the period to the sentence that is the world. With all this in mind, with all that we have talked about today, is the Lich balanced? Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. This has been dope. I actually really enjoy talking about whether or not the Lich is balanced because they are so incredible in the show. It's an incredible character. I love so many of their quotes, and I have quoted the Lich's monologues a lot. They're so cool. In particular, there's one where it's, "You are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. There is only death for you and destruction for your people." It's so cool. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, or if you just want to learn more about a specific topic that I've covered, that would be fantastic too. I am more than happy to help, more than happy to go over some things, more than happy to bring back up slides if I need to. I am super excited I got through the bulk of it quite early. When we're at about I'd say after like 10 minutes of the Q&A, we'll go over to the closing, and then we will head out after that. That gives me what your opinion is. He balanced? I am going to abstain my opinion because I want you guys to think about it, and I would rather it be a thought for you guys to take home. Unless you have a character, you from Star Trek and Discord from MLP. Yeah, I actually can see a lot of similarities between him and Discord from My Little Pony. I haven't watched MLP much. I haven't really seen the show or done much around that, but I have seen Discord specifically because they're super, super cool. He is entirely overpowered. Discord interesting. Well, funnily enough, voiced by the same guy. Fantastic. I do love seeing how similar some characters can be within different types of media, especially like when it's transcending from like, oh, this is animated, it's 2D, to, oh, this is live action, it's 3D, oh, this is a game. It's super cool. For instance, actually, the Lich specifically has been in multiple places. They've been in different shows. It's not just Adventure Time. And that's part of what makes them so cool, is that they exist in the multiverse in Adventure Time. And, you know, that does mean that there may be some shows that just have the Lich there. He's just not there yet. And that's really cool. Having an enemy that can't lose is pretty dope. Let's see. Why are you such a durable dork right now? How dare. Real talk. What's an example of hybrid scaling and how it works besides Guild Wars? So, let's see. Dark Souls is a fantastic example. So, it might be strange for me to mention Dark Souls, but it is hybridly scaled, which is very strange because it does have levels, it does have stats, it does have things that you increase. It does have weapons that get better. It does have upgrades. So how is that hybrid scaling? Well, actually, actually, it's because if you have a flamberge and you use a flamberge, or you have a long sword and you use a long sword, if you have a long sword and your friend has a long sword, they are the same longsword. It is not a longsword level 3, it is a longsword. Now you can upgrade them to like longsword plus 1, longsword plus 2, but you will never find just a longsword plus 3. It's just the longsword. There isn't the astral longsword, the rustic longsword, the longsword of the Throngul. It's just the longsword, and the longsword is about as effective as the longsword is. And I love, I just love that there's like kind of steps that you get to, and you can tell how far someone's progressed through the game by what they're able to use, but you're never going to really get to a point where you can't defend yourself. And that is so cool because in things that have horizontal scaling in them in any type, you get skill-based combat usually at some point. Skill-based combat is fantastic. It doesn't work everywhere, but it does work in a lot of places where in Dark Souls, you will be attacked by people who have every weapon in the game. They're max level. They have everything in the game. They've played it from beginning to end 3, 4, 5 times. They have the longsword plus 9. They have the armor that you can only get by beating the game like 3 times in a row or whatever. But you still can defend yourself. There's nothing preventing you from just, fighting back. Your skill is ultimately what determines how good you are. And now that might be a problem for some games and some books and some whatever, but for Dark Souls, it works. That's kind of the experience they wanted to have, and they nailed it perfectly. Thank you for asking that, by the way. That's a very good question. Let's see, when you think of a series that has bad power scaling, Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail instantly. There is no doubt in my mind that Fairy Tail has absolutely horrendous power scaling. There is literally nothing balanced about that system. There is nothing balanced about magic. There is nothing balanced about anything that they do. The guns aren't balanced. The swords aren't balanced. The characters aren't balanced. The thing they speak about aren't balanced. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem, because it's not really intended to be, but it is not balanced at all. It is not scaled at all. A good example in Fairy Tail is Natsu has linear scaling sometimes, but sometimes he doesn't. He has horizontal scaling sometimes, but sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes it's horizontal, sometimes it's linear, sometimes it's hybrid, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's a shonen. Don't worry about it. And yeah, sure, main character of a shonen. What do you expect? No, it's fine. It's fine. Listen, I hit Fairy Tail in the knees lovingly. I do like Fairy Tail. Some other arcs are bad, but man, I love Fairy Tail. Ah, yeah. You have a fantastic idea. Thank you. Um, so even if it's not Natsu, right, the main character of a shonen, of course the main character of a shonen is going to be overpowered. What do you mean? Of course they're going to be overpowered. But even Lucy, check out Lucy. Actually, I think Lucy's the main character. It's kind of hard to tell. Lucy is super overpowered. Sometimes. Sometimes they're not. It kind of doesn't matter. It's just kind of, they're as powerful as the story at the time needs them to be. Do the writers want to create another arc where Lucy is helpless? Well, then fine. Their summons don't work for some reason, or they're not as strong as they used to be. Yeah, sure, they broke a boulder in half, but, 2 minutes ago, but no, sure, what stops them now? Don't worry about it. It's fine. But again, for Fairy Tail, that's not the point. I give them so much flack because it's not the purpose. It's funny to joke about, just like it's funny to be like, how did Goku get disabled by a slap? That's kind of dumb. But it's funny. And if comedy is what they're going for, which normally they are with those situations, then it's fine. Like, that's the purpose. That's the experience that they're trying to maintain. It might not be balanced, but it's the experience they wanted. I mean, while we're waiting here during the Q&A, I will actually have the, there we go, little list. That way you might be able to see the things that we have talked about previously and form a question off of that. I think they still grow and their compliant or their omnipotence becomes a weakness and a character flaw. That's interesting. I do like seeing how literal gods are balanced in media. It's incredibly interesting. By the way, thank you again, Mythics, for the shout on that. That was fantastic to keep in mind. I do love. Let's see. Is there a way to recap linear and horizontal scaling in the sense of two? Absolutely. Linear scaling from point A to point B goes in a pretty straight line up, typically. It picks a direction and just kind of stays with it. So linear scaling is like 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4, becomes 5. That's about it. Your sword gets stronger over time, and that's just how it is. Horizontal scaling, on the other hand, is like you never really get stronger. It's just that some things are better for you specifically. Linear scaling asks, what do you have? Horizontal scaling asks, how do you use what you have? Yeah, basic RPG standard is linear. You can think of like your standard hero shooter as horizontal, right? In an ideal world in Overwatch, Mercy isn't any stronger than Widowmaker. They're just different, right? Um, Genji isn't any better than Widowmaker. They're just different. Now, I know that's not the case because scaling is hard, but it's a fantastic example. Yeah, it's like in Warframe too. Warframe, Octavia is very, very good. And Neza is very, very good. And you know who else is very, very good? Oberon. You know who else is very, very good? Every other frame. If your playstyle matches the character that you're working with, every single frame is exactly just about on par with each other. I know there are some exceptions and I know there's some bad balance, but for the most part, they are on par with each other. Octavia can go ham when they need to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Octavia's better than Neza or better than Mag, to give one that you start off with, which is more stereotypical mage class. It just means that they're better for the person who's playing it. So what would you call a game where the scaling decides to be a bunch of vertexes going back and forth across all 6 axes like a drunken FIFA driver? Uh, it's fine. You know, if a creator wants to have a completely unbalanced experience and that's what they want to do, fair enough. It's far be it from me to stop them. If the scaling is all over the place, where it's like you lose and gain and lose and gain and lose and gain and lose and gain power, I'm not entirely certain. I'm gonna be completely honest with my ignorance here. I don't know. I have no idea. I also don't get the reference, but I assume you're talking about something very specific. With that, I'm actually going to cut these off so that way I can go into the closing. A special thanks to CozyCon 2023 for having me and letting me blow y'all's ears off about game design. I deeply appreciate the opportunity and look forward to attending next year. I know I said I'd do a panel about magic, and you got one, because you know what's really hard to do? Magic scaling. It's really hard. So I still did one. You got a little bit bamboozled, but that's okay. Also, special thanks to Void Quail, Mythics_art in the chat. Void, I think, is also in the chat. Jared, those guys, because without them, this panel would have been significantly more disorganized. Also, thank you to Garn. Garn isn't here, but Garn, if you watch this later, you're freaking awesome. You're entirely the reason why I have so much to say about this. Remember when I said that friend that I've blown their ear off for like 3 hours before? That was them. We've had so many discussions lasting days, literally, about balance and game design. And they might speak it like they don't know anything, but the truth is they're very intelligent in that area, and it's incredibly fun to talk to them about stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm super glad it was fun. I'm really glad that everyone seemed to enjoy it. That was awesome. I really super appreciate the con. It's been super fun. Oh. Also, I am Trustmeiexist. If you want to find art and stuff, you can find me wherever Trustmeiexist appears. You can find me on Ko-fi. Guess what? Trust me, I exist. You can find me on Twitch. Guess what? Trust me, I exist. You can find me on Blue Sky. Guess what? Trust me, I exist. FA. Guess what? Trust me, I exist. Anywhere you see that name, I'm probably there, or at least used to be. You can find a link elsewhere. This was information as I was thinking of making him. Do it. Do it. Don't think about it. Do it. Absolutely. Like, there are infinite engines to choose from. They all have different things that they can do. You can choose anything from Godot to Love to Scratch, even. Just go for it. There are thousands of engines out there, and honestly, anything from Platinum Art Sandbox to, if you guys have ever even heard of that, you know, to Unreal Engine or CryEngine, anything in between will do. I mean, I use Minecraft as an engine sometimes because it's easier to build in a game than it is to build a game. Yeah, totally fair. And yeah, learning's just part of the process. The best way to learn is just to experiment, mess up, and do it again. You'll learn so much more that way than you ever will taking it carefully. And man, great. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I need to learn that one myself. I've been I've been looking at it, but I haven't quite taken the plunge yet. Yeah. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to hand it off to the ads so that way we can have the glorious artists who are being vendors this year displayed and have them fantastic PCs. Thank you. I appreciate it. Next up on Real Engine, then Unity. Awesome. Yeah, maybe not Unity yet, but just give it a little bit to cool down. But yeah, Unreal Engine, fantastic. Um, and I think you made a great choice starting with Godot because Godot is it shares a lot in common with a lot of different engines, and I think it'll be a great starting point and foundation. Not that you have to start with it or keep with it, just that it's a good idea to choose that one as your first one if that is what you're going into. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful time at con. And I will see you guys later. Goodbye.